since I got to the studio, and it's driving me crazy because it just like lands on my face and then flies away, and then lands on my face and then flies away. And the word fly, like, was it named a fly because it was a being that flew, or was flying named flying after the thing that was flying? Fly. Just disregard. These are the questions that keep me up in the middle of the night. Hello and welcome back to the Creatives Podcast. I'm your host, Ramzi. If you've never seen this podcast before, if this is the first time you tune in, welcome. If you're joining us again and you're a listener of past episodes, welcome back. Thank you for being here. This is kind of wrapping up season 1 of The Creatives and kicking off season 2. So I wanted to create this episode as a little bit of a recenter, a little bit of a refocus. Season 1 was amazing. There was so many incredible people on the show that we spoke to. We explored creativity. It brought rise to challenges personally for me, like technical challenges, logistics challenges, and then just like personal challenges of being a host and being a sort of like, I guess, like outward facing public person. It's tough, and I'm gonna talk a little bit about some of the struggles, but the focus of this episode today is just to kind of like recenter, reconnect with you, the awesome viewers, awesome listeners, and just say hello. And I want to talk to you a little bit about me and who I am, who is Ramzi Estephan, because I figured that'd be a good way to kind of move forward. I want you to know who I am, who your host is. Plus, I don't always get the opportunity to share who I am and what I'm about. So I figured this would be a cool episode. In this episode, I'd like to kind of reflect back on our past 19 episodes. I'd like to talk a little bit about plans moving forward for the Creatives Podcast, kind of what we'd like to do. I'd like to touch on some of the things that were challenging and some of the things that I learned from creating season 1, and honestly, I'm immensely proud of the work, and I'm immensely proud of the guests that came out of their shell to be on the show. It's not comfortable. I'm fully aware that it's nerve-wracking, and it's stressful to kind of just put yourself out there. And honestly, like, to be completely honest, that was getting to me at times, getting a little bit in my head. I was busy. Life was happening. I was, pursuing other aspects of like my goals and my plans. And this kind of got put on the side, and it was hard to come back. It was hard to find the motivation to come back. So I'm here, and I'm looking forward to what the future holds with the Creatives Podcast. The feedback's been amazing. People, I oftentimes forget like that I've put this out into the world. And when people come to me and they tell me, hey, I saw this episode, or hey, I love this episode, I learned so much about this because I'm interested in this. And, it's a reminder that like, this is great. I mean, it motivates me, and it motivates our team to just like keep creating more, because from the start, the Creatives Podcast, there was never any like I guess financial what's the word I'm looking for? There was never any like money that was like fueling this. Like, so it was always just like a passion project, and that's what I loved about it. But once I got into the routine, and when you do something enough, I kind of boxed myself in a little bit in terms of the format, in terms of the preparation. So that kind of unmotivated me a little bit. And I'm going to get into how I plan on moving away from feeling boxed in, and what I want to do for season 2 of the Creatives, and just moving forward with this platform. I don't want to call it a show. This is just one piece of the Creatives. I do believe the Creatives is going to just, it's a platform. It's a community. It's a safe space where people can just be themselves and just be, with nothing after the word be, just be. I am. My lovely girlfriend Sarah always tells me I am is a complete sentence. Just I am. You exist. Thank you for existing. So yeah, long-winded intro, but welcome to the Creatives Podcast. This is a show where we explore creativity through conversation. This podcast has been and continues to be powered by Pano Media. So if you don't know, Pano Media is a commercial video production company that specializes in commercial video production, aerial video production with drones, and we focus a lot in real estate and automotive and kind of just like high quality audio and video capture, as this podcast has been a testament to, and a training exercise with high quality capture. So that is Pano Media. Pano Media is owned and operated by me, Ramzi. We have one employee that works with us, Ryan Dennis. He's our editor of the podcast. We'll talk a little bit about him in a bit. But and then we have other like contractors and people that kind of work with us on a project basis. This is something that Pano Media, it started as a passion project for fun. It used to be called Panorams. That was kind of like a nice play on words of panorama. My name is Ramzi, so Panorams. That was a name that was birthed by just like having a conversation with some friends and writing a bunch of things on a paper, and that came to be, and it stuck. And so Panorams was an exploration. I was just exploring photography, and as things evolved and the digital space evolved and the tools became much more accessible and you could get really good cameras for not a lot of money, I started exploring video, and it kind of escalated. And as I was finishing university, I was exploring it. I was doing this as like a side thing, and COVID happened, and I saw it as an opportunity to just go 2 feet in and try and do full-time work with a camera. And here we are 3 years later, and I'm so grateful for the opportunities and the people that have allowed it to continue to grow. And I appreciate, what it's become. And I always stand by trying to give as much value as possible to the people that we work with. I always want to offer the highest quality product that a customer will get with the services that we offer. And it's a ever evolving journey. So a little bit about Pano Media. I might go a little bit more into it in a bit, but another big part of this podcast has been Midnight Hour Studios, which is where we are today. Midnight Hour Studios, Jen and Nick, shout out to you. You're both amazing people and really cool. And our friendship and our relationship has grown over the development of this podcast. So it's been really cool, and it's been like immensely just useful to have this space where we can record, where we can meet, where we can test equipment, where we can just hang out. And it's truly incredible. And I like amazing thanks to Midnight Hour Studios, because they've been a sponsor of this show from early on, and they've offered our listeners a discount code, which is in the description box below. You can get 25% off your booking. If you need to come and do a photo shoot, they got paper backdrops over there. If you need to have a meeting, if you need to do like a little event, if anything you need to do with a space that's this size, you can rent it. Obviously, being respectful of the space, they'll pretty much let you do anything you need to do to help your creative dreams become a reality. So I'm going to throw things back a little bit, where we started with the Creatives Podcast. It started in October of 2022. So in the past, I had done 2 podcasts before. The first one was called The Flat Tire. That was with my friends Keishan and Brandon. At the time, Keishan and Brandon were kind of working on a company called The Greasy Fix. It was kind of started out as an auto blog, and it evolved into like a media company. And I was working closely with Keishan at the time, and a lot of my early kind of commercial work was with him. We were shooting a lot of construction, and those times were great. We had a lot in common. It was really fun to just kind of explore and, learn the trade, learn the industry, and learn the hardships, honestly, about business. And kind of it allowed us to figure out what we both wanted and what we wanted to do. But amidst all that, we started a podcast called The Flat Tire, where we honestly just talk shit in a way, like for fun. We didn't talk shit about each other, but we just we talked about current events in the automotive world and controversial events, and we got, I think, 8 episodes in, and that was my first experience with podcasting, and I quite enjoyed doing it, and I quite enjoyed just sitting down and having a conversation. And as weird as this may sound, I started enjoying the sound of my own voice. When you speak into a microphone with headphones feeding your voice back into your ears, it's a unique experience, and it's almost energizing in a way. It kind of makes me want to keep talking. And I do forget when I spend a lot of time away from the mic and away from recording. I often forget how satisfying it is to just sit and have a conversation. So that was early on. The Flat Tire podcast was the first endeavor. COVID kind of put a fork in that because we couldn't get together and record anymore. And then life happened and the world changed, and that kind of dissipated. And I know Keishan kept that podcast going. It's still on Spotify. You can look back to those past episodes. I'll actually link them down in the description. Truly funny, honestly. Like, we used to just be silly. It was good times, good memories. I'm glad those memories exist on the internet and probably are never going to be deleted off the internet, but what can you do? And then after that, I had started a podcast called Take One with my good friend Andrew. Andrew and I still work together to this day. Andrew is an incredibly talented editor and just very creative and very good at capturing images in a way that not many other people know how to do, and with not a lot of fancy tools. It's just a good quality camera, good quality gimbal, and Andrew can do some amazing work. And over time, it's been amazing to see how he's grown in his career. And he is an editor with Pano Media, and his editing skills are just getting better and better and better and better. So very grateful to have him on the team, and I'm sure we'll have him on the podcast one day. But Andrew and I started a podcast called Take One, where we were just talking about, honestly, I feel like we were just working through ideas ourselves, and we were figuring things out ourselves. And we were recording this at Apex V2R. At the time, I was working for Apex V2R. So after hours, we'd go there in the dead of winter. It was down Carling Avenue in a second story of a random building. So we'd go there and we'd record podcasts. I think we got, again, 8 episodes in. So that was just talking about video and photo and mindset, and kind of, it was a little bit geared towards people starting out, and we were the people starting out talking to people starting out. So that kind of lended itself to a little bit of a conflict, because we were talking about what to do and how to get started and how to make things happen. And I felt like we weren't actually making those things happen, or at least I wasn't making those things happen in the capacity that I wanted to. So again, logistics and time and life got in the way, and that podcast did come to a close. Maybe it'll be started back up one day. I'm not sure, but it's still on Spotify. It's still on Apple Podcasts, and you can still listen to it. That was my first 2 endeavors at a podcast. So naturally, I gravitated back towards the long format podcast. It was October of 2022, and I was feeling lost. I was feeling just does anyone else feel the same way as I do? A little bit numb, a little bit just curious. Curiosity has always been a big driving factor in my life, because curiosity has, sorry, there's a freaking fly keeps landing on my face. Curiosity it's both gotten me in trouble, and it's both gotten me to the best opportunities and accomplishments I've ever had in my life. So, adding on to that, curiosity birthed the Creatives Podcast. I was sitting in the studio at home. I have an editing studio. That's kind of where the post-production happens. And when we shoot in here. But in the post-production studio, it's not an overly large space. It's a very focused space, purpose-built space. And I do record in there, but I do find myself to be limited in there. But I sat down and I threw on the mic, and I called it episode 0. And it was the pilot episode of The Creatives. And I basically called out people who embodied creativity in the forefront of their efforts. And I wanted to talk to them. And it was received well. And people started reaching out. People started showing interest, and it took a few months to materialize, but not long after, we had our first official recording in here in this space, Midnight Hour Studios, with Joseph Julian. And I'm going to kind of reflect back on the individuals that we spoke with on this show and what I learned from them and what I took away. And I just want to remind you, if you've missed some of the past episodes, just to kind of shed light upon who we've spoken to, in case you're interested, in case you missed it. I know there's so much content on the internet that things get missed. So if you're listening to this, I hope you can maybe gain a little signpost that points you into the direction of a past episode that can bring you value. So basically, I felt compelled to get back into podcasting. I was attempting short form content at the time and just like recording YouTube videos. And, I still love doing that, but I struggle a lot with concept development and also just like energy. I do have a finite amount of energy in a day, and I spend my energy on many things in my life, whether that be personal endeavors, social endeavors, like racing cars, just like general fitness and well-being. And, that doesn't leave a lot of room for creating content in my life. I'm not saying you can't do that, but I personally have a finite amount of energy where at a certain point in the day, I'm just useless. Or after I've done a certain amount of work, I'm not going to create effective work. So basically, I turned to podcasting because it was this long format conversation where we could commit a little bit less time, but also gain a lot of value from it through the form of like a long format conversation that could be consumed in audio, in video, in a car, in an office, at the gym, anywhere. It could be consumed anywhere. And then it could also be carved into social media clips. So for me, from a content strategy standpoint, it made sense. From a time commitment standpoint, it made sense. And so that's kind of why I wanted to get back to it. As also on top of that, besides the technical benefits and content benefits and all that fun stuff, I enjoy it. I enjoy talking. Like I said, I enjoy hearing the sound of my own voice. I invite you to, honestly, like if we're ever together and I have mics and stuff, I'll throw headphones on and throw a mic on you and just listen. It's cool. It's something to get used to, but it's quite interesting. And I think everybody, whether it's from this podcast or podcasts that we've produced for clients, they end up enjoying it. And it's like, you see them get energized throughout the episode more and more. They start a little closed off. And then, once the voice gets flowing and words get moving and they really kind of open up. So it's interesting. So that was, kind of why it started and why I wanted to endeavor on it. And it honestly led me to new friends, new opportunities, new experiences, new challenges, which I'm grateful for. And, here we are today, kind of wrapping up season 1. It was really just up in the air. I didn't know what I was doing. I just kind of went with the flow, and the way the episodes kind of played out was we were getting to know our guests, and I was kind of exploring what they struggle with, what they're challenged by. I was exploring some of the hardships that they've had in their life, some of the victories that they've had in their life. And it was amazing to create this platform for people to showcase how talented they are and honestly just talk about themselves. And some of our guests, it was their like first time being on camera, which was just amazing. A lot of people don't like to necessarily share their whole life on the internet, but I feel like this gave them a safe space to talk about their lives. And I mean, they only talked about what they wanted to share with us, and I think that was amazing. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to be able to learn about the people that sat on this couch and some of the other spots that we recorded. And I'm grateful to have had the privilege to share it also with our viewers and our listeners. So that's kind of how the project started. And I would like to talk a little bit about where it's going also. So basically, this is a personal problem, but I was feeling not pressure, but it's like as soon as things get quantified in numbers, I find it changes the way you feel about it. So whether that's a financial goal, whether that's a follower count, whether it's a number of likes, whatever it is, if a goal for me, and maybe other people can relate to this, if a goal is rooted in a quantity of something, it's quantifiable with a number, I find, yeah, it can be motivated, but once you get there, you're kind of left empty-handed. And I don't know why I was like fixated on like 20 episodes. I want to hit 20 episodes. I want to hit 20. And this is the 20th episode. But in doing that, I lost like sight of why I did this. I lost sight of, what why we started doing the creatives. And moving forward, I kind of want to just get rid of the episode numbers. There's not going to be any more episode numbers. There will be, if you were to count. I'm not going to go back and delete the past 19, the titles from the past 19, but it's just going to be episodes. And I want these episodes to come out as frequently as we're able to produce them, because we do full-time video production, and the schedule could be, 1 week we're out of town, 1 week we're shooting sunrise outdoor shots, and 1 week we're shooting an event in the evening. And so the schedule is all over the place. And I know summer makes it a little bit harder, but now as we kind of get into fall and get into the winter months, it will be much easier to kind of record more frequently and indoors, because it's cold outside and there's not a whole lot going on. So I am actually looking forward to winter. Call me crazy, but I love winter personally. It brings upon a whole new kind of vibe. I love the fact that it just transforms our entire world into like winter wonderland. It's cool. It just changes your environment from something that just falls out of the sky. So episode numbering, goodbye. It's gone. Also structure to the episodes. So in the past episodes, they've been structured very much the same. But as I learned throughout the journey of creating this podcast, and I learned this from the Ottawa Design Club. It's actually written on the back of their zines, Ottawa Design Club. Shout out to you. You're freaking amazing. Everything is art. And as Francois from episode 2, Money Myths, everyone is creative. So embodying this kind of blanket statement, I want every episode to be, or I want anything to be an episode. Now, I say that lightly. I'm not just going to record random stuff that has no value, but I travel around a lot. I move around a lot, and I run into a lot of people, and I see opportunity to just turn on some microphones and talk to someone in a random location about one topic, 20 minutes, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever it may be. I want the creatives to be a platform where we can host, we can rehost individuals that were on the show. I want it to be a platform where we can turn on a mic for 5 minutes and talk about a topic. We can talk about anything, but it will all be rooted in creativity. It all starts with creativity, and the conversations go anywhere that the words will flow. So, holding that, it's kind of honestly a little bit inspired by the Gary Vee audio experience, which is Gary Vee is an entrepreneur and public speaker, and his podcast, he calls it an audio experience, but it's a podcast. He records Zoom meetings. He records literally just like coffee meetings. Absolutely everything that could have value conversationally is recorded and put up as a episode. So I'm not necessarily going to go to that extent because I don't communicate with people at that level, but I do run into a lot of people. And one thing I can promise you is no matter what format the episodes will be, the audio will always be the highest quality that is possible. Always, always, always. Audio is very important to us, and it is a big part of the experience. So whether we're out and we're recording it on lav mics, or we're recording it on just literally a recorder that if we're sharing a mic, whatever it is, the conversations will have value. The conversations will be high quality audio, and I'm just kind of excited to break my own mold and have a little bit of a different approach to this. We're still going to do episodes in the studio. We're still going to sit down and get to know guests. But those episodes are a bit more constructed and they're a bit more planned, and they take a bit more time to set up because you have to coordinate with people's busy lives. So this is kind of moving forward into the future of the Creatives as a platform, not just a podcast. We're going to continue to explore creativity through conversation. It's just for a matter of staying motivated and staying energized towards this. I want to explore formats. I want to explore ways we can do this. So basically, that's kind of what's been on my mind. I wanted to recenter, refocus, talk to you about the plans, about the feelings, and I'm gonna kind of we'll close this episode off by going through some of the guests, or all the guests actually, that we spoke to in the last 19 episodes. But basically, I want to talk to you a little bit about myself, Ramzi, Estephan, the founder of Pano Media, the founder of TheCreatives Podcast. Whatever the titles may be, these are just things that you just put beside your name to help identify yourself in social and professional environments. Basically, origin story. I'm kind of going through some of the questions that I would ask guests on this show. I'm going to go through some of these questions that our lovely guests have had the opportunity to answer and share with the world. So the one I love to ask is the origin story. Where are you from? Marvel Comics, like black and white, the comic book strip that's being drawn out. Ramzi is born. I was born in 1996, November 19th, in London, England, in Hammersmith. If you know where that is, if you're familiar with London. My parents are both Lebanese, and they fled Lebanon when they were in their, I believe, early 20s. It was a politically corrupt country, war-ridden, and opportunities were scarce, and it was tough. It was a really tough life, and I hold that perspective with me throughout my life here in the Western world and in Canada. The challenges that we face here are not even close to what my parents and their friends and family faced at the time. So that's a interesting perspective and a unique one. I feel like it's been a superpower for me to kind of hold that. So they fled the country to start a new life, and my father ended up in London, England, and he didn't speak a word of English, and he built a life from nothing and learned English and started building a life for his future family. And my sister and I were born in the 90s, in the mid 90s, in London, England, and things are great, but we had a lot of family in Canada here. So I spent the first 7 years of my life until 2004 living in London, England, and then we moved to Ottawa. So I'm 27 in a few months. So I've spent the last 20 years here. This is where I grew up. This is where I made my meaningful friends. This is where I had all of my meaningful childhood experiences that I can actually remember. And we were closer to family. And so London to Canada, and growing up here, I went to high school here, university here. I studied economics at Carleton University. And since I knew what a car was, I was freaking hooked. I loved cars. I loved how many moving pieces there were on a car. I loved driving cars. It just resonated with me. I mean, my father had always worked with cars, and he would always bring different cars home. He would always work on people's cars at our house. So I would see so many different cars and just get to sit and explore and experience that. And you know, in my adult years, that did translate to me having a propensity to purchase a lot of shit boxes and save them and drive them and purchase cars for different purposes. And things have gone a little bit out of hand with on the vehicle front, and Pano Motorsports has been birthed from all that. There's several vehicles in the fleet that all serve a different purpose, but cars were always a big part of my life, and cars actually are what put a camera in my hand, because cars I wanted to photograph them nicely. I wanted wallpapers for my iPod Touch. I wanted wallpapers for my computer. So I started photographing cars with iPhones or with an iPhone and using, rudimentary Instagram from back in the day and just doing a tilt shift where you blur out the top and bottom. And then also grade 10 photography class was actually the first time I played with a DSLR, but I didn't really care much about it. But as time went on, I ended up, like I said, I wanted to take pictures of cars for wallpapers. So I borrowed a camera from my friend. I borrowed a lens from my other friend, and I just started shooting. And, life kept happening, and graduated high school, went to university for 5 years. All the while I was working in a kitchen at Gabriel's Pizza. I was a breakfast cook, a dinner cook. I would make pizzas, pastas, spaghetti, subs, sandwiches, eggs, like the entire breakfast menu. Honestly, I loved that job because I got free food and I got paid a good amount for a student, which was great. And I got free car storage out of it. So that was a sick deal. So I got to store my car in the winter because my boss had access to a parking garage that he would let me use in the winter for free. So I stayed there for a while I was finishing university and kind of getting into cameras more. But, things kept escalating with cameras, and there was a connection between cars and cameras and the technical side and the customization side and the individual expression that you could showcase with either what you create with a camera or how you use a camera was similar to like cars. So like you can express yourself with how you build a car, what your car looks like, how you use your car. And then, both of these things, like they put you in positions of opportunity to make new friends and have new experiences. And, the two went hand in hand for so long, and they still do to this day. And, as I move into kind of like my late 20s of my life, I still play with cars. I'm still on the ground of my garage, just building my race car with the help of my dad, with the help of my friends, whoever's willing to help. We're still building cars. The dreams are still there. And I never want a lack of, or a perceived lack of opportunity and, a perceived lack of an ideal environment to stop something from happening. Because what I've learned is if I have a dream, if you have a dream, if you want something to happen, the likelihood that it will happen is very pretty much solely based on if you believe it can happen. So it's something that I'm still training and practicing to keep that mindset of positive thinking, not negative thinking. So if I believe something can happen, it absolutely will happen. But if I start doubting it, if I start, diminishing what I'm capable of doing, or just getting bogged down by whatever life or whatever it is, it slows things down and it makes things not happen. So I invite you to wholeheartedly believe in what you're doing and believe that you can make things happen. And, racing is one of those things where, compared to professional race teams, like I don't have necessarily the most incredible resources to go racing. I have a good set of tools. I have a small garage and I have a car. And this year I've learned a lot actually about the hardships of racing, and I actually went into my first like wheel-to-wheel race this year. I did 2 races. I came 3rd place in both races. It's just like a local series. And then I also blew my engine this year. So I'm currently, actually last night I pulled my old engine out, and an engine from a newer version of my car is going in. It's still over 20 years old, but those hardships oftentimes do bog me down, and I try not to let them make me lose sight of what I wanted to do. So origin story, kind of long-winded answer. I get why people get lost in this question, because I just asked myself origin story and I went off in like several different directions, because like, how do you kind of boil down your origin story into like, a short conversation? So it's interesting to answer these questions and feel for my guests, and it kind of might help me host better. So, origin story, cars, cameras, business, entrepreneurship, all have been a big part of my life in one way or another. And they continue to be, although the mediums have evolved and changed with the, enormous rise of the digital space and how we literally trade digital files nowadays on the internet. The core values of curiosity and, entrepreneurship, like they stay rooted in everything that we do. And I believe that's going to take us to cool heights. And one thing I've always held is my desire to create opportunities for people, create experiences for people, memories. And that's kind of what Pano Media and the Creatives has been about from the beginning. It's just about creating cool and unique experiences, creating, memorable pieces of work with our video, and just like unique pieces that people will actually remember and that can actually add value and make people's lives easier, make their lives smoother, more efficient, whether it's for the goal, whether the goals are marketing or whether the goals are something else or whatever it is. We always want to continue to, have these new shared experiences that help us to build bonds and build relationships, and the people are really what it is all about. And that is one thing that I did learn from doing this podcast is how it is about the people, and everything else is kind of secondary. But not to discount it by calling it secondary, but the focus should be, and I try to continue to make it, the human connection. And I learned that from Jen Bernard actually, and other people, but she reminded me of that, and we'll dive into that in a little bit. But so that kind of actually touched on why I do this. And what do I even do? What do I do? I am, honestly, professionally, what do I do? I'm a video director. I'm a cinematographer. I'm a licensed drone operator. I'm a video creator, photographer, audio record, like sound mixer. All of these hats. I got exposed to the film industry early on, and I didn't like the idea of just holding one role and just doing that, because my brain doesn't like that. I know I can do more. And, I was taught early on, I was in the camera department on a film set, and someone needed a hand, and I was told, that's not your department. Don't help the people in the other department. And I'm like, what do you mean? I'm not doing anything. I'm just standing here waiting for the next take. We've already done all the stuff. And I was just like, I don't like that. I don't like it's not my department mindset, because if I can help, I will help. And I wanted to explore all of the departments in a traditional structured film set. So that set me off on the exploration of exploring everything. And I think that's kind of what a modern videographer does. They wear the hats of everything. You can take it very far. You can go very deep. You can just be a guy or a girl with a camera, or you can just go immensely freaking deep into that onion and do lighting and do audio and direct. And you can even start building out crews, and it's still video production. But because they're small crews, so you still have to hold multiple hats technically. So basically I've learned a lot of what it takes to do all sorts of, positions in the creating of video work. And I still, if there's an opportunity to support someone else's production and just kind of be a fly on the wall and help them with literally just carrying light stands and setting up lights, I'll do it, because I like to see how other people do things, and it's kind of refreshing to be in those positions where there's a lot less responsibility, I'll be honest. So, as things carry on, what do? I operate Pano Media from the kind of administrative side. I have obviously support from professionals to help run accounting stuff and some back end stuff. But basically, public relations with our clients and overseeing all of the operations is what I do. And I'm on the ground with a camera in my hand, shooting houses, shooting like flying drones, running productions and just directing our clients and just trying to overall create this empowering space where people can enter and share their messages and share their products, whatever services they have to offer. We're sharing it through the video space, and I always want to make it as comfortable of an experience as possible. And that is a big reason why I put myself on camera, because I find by putting myself on camera, I can better understand like the real struggles it takes to be in front of a camera. So basically that's what I do for work. What do I do for fun? I eat. I love food. I love going out and just eating in different local restaurants with friends, with my partner Sarah. And I love traveling. I love exercising, and I love cars. I love driving. Anything that has an engine or a motor and it moves under its own power and I can operate it, I freaking love it. I don't know why. It's a fascination with movement. I guess I don't know. I don't know. I recently bought an ATV, like a 4-wheeler, and that is honestly some of the most fun I've had in a vehicle. In my life. It's fun. You can just go places that your feet would take you a very long time to take you there. You can go places that cars are too big to go, and you can just drive over rocks, through giant puddles, drive up steep hills, drive over logs. And honestly, that is what I do for fun. I race cars. I drive 4-wheelers through a bush. I just drive. I work on the cars. I spend a lot of time cleaning my cars, to be completely honest. And because I find a car drives better when it's clean, even though it's technically driving the same, but you feel different driving a car that's clean. Try it out. Trust me. Just give your car a vacuum, wipe the dashboard down, wipe the dust off, throw out all the garbage from inside. I promise you, money back guaranteed. I promise you will feel better about driving that car. Doesn't matter what car it is. I've never driven fancy cars because I don't really care to go into crazy debt for a car. But the one thing I've always stood by is a clean car. Keeping a car clean is if you're gonna do one thing, just keep it clean and maintain it. You preserve it. It will treat you well if you treat it well. Cars have energy. They have an aura. So if you treat your car like shit, it's probably gonna treat you like shit in return. So what I do for yeah. Spend a lot of time in the driveway and neighbors just walk by. You're going to clean my car next? No, I'm not. You can go do it. I also just don't feel like it. Anyway, things that I'm challenged by. This is challenged by, so obviously this is a vulnerable position to talk about the things that challenge you, because on a surface level, I'm challenged by a little bit of self-discipline and just focus, staying on track, not getting distracted, not losing sight, remembering the vision. And I'm sometimes challenged with like the mundaneness of life, because, as you grow up in the digital world and the stimulation is always there. So trying to live a life that's a bit more calm, not as stimulated, it can be challenging. And another thing that I'm challenged by, which I've actually never spoken about publicly, is a little bit of addiction, to be honest. And not necessarily anything life-threatening, but, we grew up at a time where marijuana was illegal, and we consumed it for fun. And, as things evolved, it was just always there. It was always around. There was a lot of people around me that were smoking weed. So it was never a problem because I got straight A's in high school. I got straight A's in university, almost all straight A's except for first year. We're going to write that off. And I managed to still work 30 hours a week, to start a business, to do everything by the book and do it right and do it well. All the while, weed was always this kind of like underlying thing, but I didn't realize that it would catch up to me in my adult years as a thing that became a little bit of a crutch, a little bit of a thing that you realize oh, this actually is a little bit tough to manage, because it does create a sense of relief and like anti-anxiety in you that when you get used to it, it gets hard to stop. And I honestly don't think I've ever publicly spoken about this because it's scary in a way. I feel there's always that fear of judgment, but by I learned recently, we were at an event for Ottawa Design Club, and Ryan and Tanoa, sorry if I said that wrong, he was a guest speaker, and he was vulnerable with us as an audience. And his vulnerability was inspiring, and it did the opposite of what you fear vulnerability will do. It didn't make people want to make fun of him. It almost inspired a sense of relief, like, shit, like, I feel you. I'm in the same boat, never spoken about it, but as things evolved, like, weed became legal, and it started getting stronger and stronger and stronger, and that started to kind of mess with my head, because then you can no longer handle things the same way. And I do believe it's kind of not necessarily the best thing in the world that it's legal, although it was seen as like, legalize weed, it's amazing, blah blah blah, all this stuff. Now that it's legal, it's like, okay, like, teach people about the potential hazards of it, because they're very, very like blurry, and it may not be seen as a problem, but it definitely can be challenging, and it's just, for me, what the challenge is shaking the dependency on it, because on the surface you would never guess it. It never really affected my ability to perform in all aspects of my life, but it was just a matter of, it became a matter of longevity and just health. Mental health was the big one. Physical health as well, but it was more so mental health. So it's an ongoing challenge, and it is an ongoing discussion, and I do invite you, if you want to just talk about it, I'd love to just talk, and I hope that me being vulnerable with you inspires you to maybe be vulnerable with someone in your life to just help you, or just be honest with yourself to just get a better understanding of yourself and your habits. So, that was very hard for me to talk about, I'll be completely honest, and I'm going to continue flowing into this conversation of where do I see things moving in the future, and the creatives and myself. And, to wrap up, we're going to go through the guests from the past and, reflect and celebrate some of the things that we learned from them. So Pano Media, the Ottawa film industry is growing. Canadian film industry is growing. And I know I entered it not very long ago, but I do see Pano Media as a force in the industry of being like a specialized kind of service where we do support the film industry, where we do pioneer the video production industry by bringing in, cinema quality tools and techniques into the video space at a larger scale, and just, creating opportunities, creating films, creating videos, utilizing new tech to help keep old things alive, and just like that's kind of how I see Pano Media. And as the film industry grows, I believe that we're going to continue to grow with it and continue to support it as we have been in the last couple of years. We've been supporting local film and TV productions with drone operating. So that's been incredible. And we also support other video production companies with their endeavors, and we support them with our resources, with our tools, with our skills, with our experience. And I love that. I love to work with other people to help them elevate their stuff, because we kind of all benefit from it. So, and it's fun. It's fun to work with people in different environments and all that stuff. So that's where Pano Media is going. It's growing. It is an entity now. It is no longer like, just like, it's not just me. It's yes, I feed the machine, if you will, and I operate, and I do in theory like own it, but it is becoming an entity, and it's becoming a legitimate kind of like company, And I'm very proud of that. And I look forward to the people that we're going to work with in the future. And I look forward to the projects that we're going to work with and some of the things that we're working on right now that will be out, later in this year and next year. So excited about that. The Creatives Podcast, as I said in the beginning of this episode, it will continue. The promise is high quality audio and valuable conversation. The format of that is not like it may vary. Disclaimer, lovely disclaimer. It may vary because it could be something along our travels where we just have a quick conversation about a topic. Could be back here in the studio where we're interviewing a guest, and there's a lot of people that I want to talk to. Thank you for being patient. There's at least 10 people that were ready to just like pretty much book in and have a show. So we will get to that as the weather starts getting colder. But that's, the Creatives Podcast is ever evolving, ever exploratory, if that's a word, into the topic of creativity. So myself in the future, personal goals, racing. I love racing. I want to continue to drive and race cars. And, every ounce of free time that I have and have energy to spend on it, it is devoted to my development as a racing driver and the development of my racing team and the development of my car. And I do see that happening more. There will be more traveling. There will be more experimenting and exploring new experiences. So I'm looking forward to that and just trying not to put a lot of pressure, but just trying to keep that positive mindset, trying to tune into the positive, not the negative, because it's very easy to get bogged down by negative thoughts. So trying to just, be optimistic and keep positive thoughts as the dominating things in my brain. So thank you, man. That was great. To just talk, honestly, really nice to just kind of talk and recenter. Gonna throw it back to the people that we had on this show. Before this episode, we had 19 episodes. Episode 1, Joseph Julian. Joseph is a talented music producer. I freaking love his music. And Joseph and I met years ago. At the time, he was working with this music label. I was working with this music label. And they kind of set up Joseph to do a sunrise live DJ set by the water. And I was brought in to film it and fly drones around. And, that's kind of where we initially met. And then we stayed connected. And years go by, staying in touch over Instagram and whatever. And I bumped into him one evening, actually shortly after recording the pilot episode. I was like, hey, do you want to... Sorry, no, he had expressed interest of being on the show when I released the pilot episode. Then I bumped into him, and then I was like, hey, man, do you want to record an episode? And I was just like, it was just randomly it was like a Friday night. We were out, we bumped into each other, and I was like, do you want to record an episode? And he's like, yeah, come by the studio that I record at, which is this studio. Joseph has a whole recording setup hidden in Midnight Hour Studios, and I can't tell you where it is. It's not behind me. Maybe it is. So we recorded episode 1 of The Creatives, and it's a pretty important episode because it was the first time we ever had a guest, and it was my first time ever hosting a guest on a podcast, and got to know Joseph, got to know about his mindset and his life, and I admire his kind of, all-in mindset and belief in himself. It's inspiring. Despite whatever circumstances that he is in, he's not letting that stop him from pursuing his music, and it shows. And his music is awesome. You can check him out, Joseph Julian Music. I'm gonna link all of these episodes down in the description. It's gonna be a pretty long description, but I'll have them all linked there so you can see them all. Episode 2, Francois Mittens, aka Mitz. Mitz is a very talented creative. He's a very talented photographer, videographer, designer. Like he knows a lot for someone who's pretty young. And Mitz and I had the opportunity to work closely together for a few years early on in our careers, and I learned so much from him. And one thing that he said on the show was that everyone is creative and everything can be creative, and the expression doesn't necessarily have to just be through art. It can be through cooking. It can be through, the way you structure your day. And like him and I, we get along, and he's killing it. He's creating some beautiful pieces of video, and just, it's awesome to see him grow. And he was our second guest on the show. And early on, I was kind of nervous, so I wanted to ask people that I was comfortable with to be on the show. And we had a great conversation. We recorded it outside in November. I'm pretty sure it was like warm in November. But check that out. Cool episode. A lot of great insights from Francois's mind. Episode 3, Mr. Cameron Forrester. Cameron, if you're listening to this, hello. I hate that you live an hour and a half away from me, but that hasn't stopped us. Cameron is one of the most energized people and energizing people to be around. And he's very talented. He knows so much about like a lot of stuff. And I love being around Cameron because he is a good friend. He is, we work together professionally, and we get along, and we've created some really cool stuff together. And it was awesome to have him on the show and learn about his life and kind of how he started and how he kind of pioneered his way in the small town of Cornwall into a little bit of like being the leader of video production in Cornwall, and being one of the few people to create high quality video in Cornwall. And he's continuing to develop that space as that city grows like crazy. Cameron is there, and he is, helping a lot of the businesses in that city by creating digital art and work with them. So that was a cool episode. Cameron told us some great stories on episode 3. On episode 4, we had Matthew Chazé of FFA, Far From Average, and BPM Studio. Matt and I go way back to high school. He was a year older than me in high school. We had a lot of similar friends, and him and I were friends. And, he was a little bit of a visionary back in high school. He started a brand called Far From Average. And, it started out, they had these like slap stickers, and you would just see these stickers all over the school, all over the city. That's what was insane. These Far From Average stickers were going far, and then they were creating merchandise, and they were running events, and they kind of really rooted themselves into the nightlife of Ottawa. And Matt is an artist. Matt is an entrepreneur. He's done so much cool stuff and continues to do so. And we recorded this episode at his studio. He eventually, after building Far From Average, and he started BPM Studio, where they do artist development, and it's a recording studio. And it was really awesome to kind of chat with Matt and learn about his motivations and kind of what he went through. And it was awesome to just record it in his space. So that was a great episode with Matt. Next up, we had my lovely partner, Sarah. Sarah, we actually recorded this episode on a whim. It was just like a random episode. I was working late one night. She came by the editing studio, and we ended up just sticking some mics into the recorder and talking with no video. It's the only episode that does not have video because it was late night. We weren't ready to be on video. But Sarah is a very, very special individual, not just because she's my partner, but also because her sights are set on some very like incredible things. She studies astrology, and she studies spirituality and practices that, and is a very authentic person who is, pretty much anything that she touches turns to gold. Obviously, that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but she's a very accepting person, and her desire and ability to help others has it's been amazing. And we talked actually a lot in that episode about who she is and what she stands for and what she believes in. And that's a cool episode. It's I would like to have her back on the show in video so you can put a face to the name. But check that out. That's episode 5 in audio only. Next up, episode 6, we had Jared Galley. Now, this was a very important episode for me because Jared Galley is the co-founder of Ajax Creative, which is, one of the pioneers in the video production industry in Ottawa, and, now growing across Canada and across the United States of America. They are truly, truly an incredible team to have worked with. So early on in my career, they gave me an opportunity to work with them, and it did accelerate a lot of my career, and it taught me so much because I was exposed to their tools and their techniques, and it was just incredible to work with them. And years and years ago, Jared Galley, like, aside from being a friend of a friend, at the time he was just a friend of a friend, and then he became a friend and an inspiration. And we were young, and he was talking to us one night, me and Felix, about how Ajax is going to be huge, and huge dreams. And it was really awesome to see his energy, and that kind of like got me interested in video because I was seeing what they were doing when cameras weren't that great. They were expensive. GoPros were like some of the best cameras you could get at the time, and a Sony A7 was brand new, like the first generation. So early on, to see his kind of forward thinking and a little bit of a visionary in that space was inspiring, and it set me off on a path to learning how to do all this stuff. And years later, having the opportunity to work with Jared and his team, and then years after that, having him as a guest on the podcast, to not only get to chat with him and get to know him even more, but also to share with the world, like, who he is and what he's built and how his brain works, was incredible because he's not a very public person. There's not much about Jared on the internet, so it was awesome to kind of give him a platform to talk about his accomplishments and talk about his perspective. So that was awesome. Episode 7, another important one. We actually recorded this back to back with episode 6, was with Nick Gattis. Nick, I met him through Joseph, because Joseph and Nick are tight. They're good friends. So Nick and I recorded a podcast in here, and Nick is the co-owner and co-founder of the studio. So Nick's a food photographer. He's a really, really good way of telling stories through images, whether he's photographing like food or drinks or whatever. And some of the things that he's worked on and is working on right now is just amazing. If you come by the studio, have a look at the artwork over there in the bathroom on the walls. These are Nick's photographs, and they tell a story. And so Nick and I got to know Nick, and that is, we kind of made a good connection on that episode, and he talked to me a lot about doing creative projects and really only showcasing like what you putting out in the world, what you want to get back. So if you're a creator or an artist and you want to get more clients for plant photography, put out a bunch of plant photography. And he did the same with food, and him doing projects for fun with food photography got him huge clients in the food photography space, just from photographing food with his team for fun. And we learned a lot about like what goes into it with a food stylist. I didn't even know that was a thing. There's food stylists, there's assistants, and all this stuff. And it's full-on productions for photos that you see on menus, drive-through boards, television ads, all that stuff. So after that episode, Nick and I spoke for like 2 hours just shooting the shit and getting to know each other. So that is what birthed the relationship of the Creatives Podcast and Midnight Hour Studios, was that recording with Nick. So that's a pretty cool one. And from that point forward, the Creatives Podcast was then kind of sponsored by Midnight Hour Studios, and the space became accessible to us to use it. So grateful for that opportunity, and it was cool to do that. So after that, we spoke with Luke Webster on episode 8. Luke is a local legend in the thrifting vintage clothing industry. On that episode, he talked to us about Bad Dog, this vintage clothing store that he co-founded with his partner Cheyenne, and he brought some really cool pieces to the show. And he showed us, if you were watching it on video, you would have seen some of the shirts that he brought, and it was just the stories behind these clothes, and like these clothes have lived through many lives, and they continue to serve as you know, fashion pieces and just, you know, daily protection from the elements. No one's going to be walking around naked. So clothes are cool. And his perspective of clothing being an expression of self was cool. And how, you know, his goal with thrifting and with vintage is to just slow down fast fashion. Like when you go to H&M or Uniqlo or Simon's and you just see mountains of shirts, like this is really bad for the environment. That shed light upon the fact that, you know, all this new clothing that's being made, it uses a lot of energy and water and resources to create. So his goal with vintage clothing is to slow it down and, you know, reuse stuff that's still really good. Like a good quality t-shirt from 30 years ago that looks dope can still be washed and worn, and it's gonna look great and it's gonna make you feel great. So it was cool to chat with Luke about that and just kind of learn about that industry. After we spoke with Luke on episode 9, we had Justin Van Leeuwen, JVL Photography. Justin's sense of humor was just great, and this episode actually ended up being a bit of a fan favorite. A lot of people said to me they really enjoyed this episode with Justin. He gave some really good insights on business and kind of business mindset. So it was cool to chat with Justin on that episode and learn about his mindset. And I met Justin through Nick. He introduced us, and this was kind of like getting into the creative space and starting to learn how many people like, oh, you know this person, you know this person, you know this person. It's a small community. So I was starting to learn how everyone knew everyone and starting to get exposed to a different generation of creatives who started 10 years before me. So that was pretty cool. Episode 10 was Motion by Mike. I still don't know Mike's last name. I think his first name's Motion by, and his last name's Mike. But no, Mike's a great dude. A lot of similarities between us. He's a gear freak. He loves his lighting and his cameras just like I do. And, maybe a little bit more than me, but Mike is someone who started doing video production later in life. And he creates incredible images with his tools and his techniques. And it was cool to see how he approaches things and learn about his perspective. And Mike said he was going to have me on his podcast one day because I think I inspired him to create a podcast. But he wants to have me on episode 10 of that. So I look forward to that, Mike, if you're listening. I'm still waiting. After Mike, we spoke with Stephen Lorne. Stephen Lorne is a production sound mixer amongst many other things. Stephen's lived, at least 10 different lives through different professions and endeavors that he's done. But what I knew Stephen for and what I met him doing was production sound mixing, and he does it really well. And him and I met we were on a commercial shoot in Toronto, and I was shooting behind the scenes. He was doing audio. And at the time I was starting one of those past podcasts that I spoke about earlier in this episode. And I was just asking Stephen questions, and he was happily giving me answers. And it was very nice of him to just kind of share his knowledge and his wisdom. And as time went on, we started bumping into each other more. I started seeing him on more sets as I was getting more involved, and I was, my career was growing, and I was working in more sets and film sets and TV commercials and stuff. I was starting to see Stephen more. Every time I saw him, it was great to chat. And he always was willing to answer my questions because audio was one of those things where I was trying to wrap my head around it so much. And I feel like he's a big reason why I've been able to wrap my head around it. And he's been a supporter of the Creatives Podcast because early on, currently right now, we record on this mixer right here, which has enough power for these microphones. But early on, it was just a little handy Zoom H5 recorder. And I was telling Steven I was getting some kind of low-level hissing in the audio, and he lent me a device. It was a Mix Pre-D, a 20-year-old device. Basically, it just gave the mics the power that they needed to sound really good because these do need a lot of power to sound good. So he lent us a Mix Pre-D, and we actually recorded maybe 5 to 8 episodes using the Mix Pre-D. And then that eventually led itself to buying the Mix Pre 3, which is a much newer version of that. It was it was able to record and give the mics the power they needed. So it was all at the recommendation of Stephen Lorne and through his help and guidance. And having him on the podcast was amazing because I think it was his first time on camera. So maybe his last time, I don't know, maybe he hated it, but I loved it. It was great to chat with him and shed light upon the industry of audio and how maybe it's not as romanticized, but it is so freaking important. Like, it is 50% of the experience with video and film. So check that episode out. Steven is just like a freaking like encyclopedia of wisdom and knowledge, and it was an honor to have him on the show. And every time we run into each other and see each other, and it's always a good time, good conversations, and I love to nerd out about the cool stuff that he has going on because just so much. Audio is a very involved industry. I've like only scraped the surface, I feel, of what's capable. So it's cool to talk to a professional who is also passionate about what they do. So episode 12 was Jen Bernard. Jen and Nick co-own and co-founded the studio. Jen is a portrait photographer, but she wasn't always a portrait photographer. She has a past as a teacher. And Jen approaches photography in a very refreshing way because she's not focused on the gear or technical stuff. She's focused on the human connection and bringing out that expression and in people and creating this bond and having people leave the shoot feeling empowered. And it's incredible, and it really shows in the images that she creates. And if you have a look at some of her work and you see the expression and the emotion and, you know, the individuality that she's able to capture in these people, it's a direct result of her and how she interacts with people. And, you know, Jen was nervous to be on the show. So it was, again, like it's an honor to have people on the show because it is out of their comfort zone, and I know that. So I'm grateful that you know, people are coming out of their shell to talk to me and to share about themselves with the world. So Jen was great. Check her out. Check that episode out. And I hope this episode comes out before, but I think she's doing an event where she's like breaking down an actual studio set really soon. So if this episode comes out before that happens, it'll be linked in the description. After that, we spoke with Remy Theriault. Remy, founder of House of Common Studio, a legend in the photo space, visual storytelling space in Ottawa, continues to be so. Remy, like, this was the first time I met Remy, and you know, he's a very busy man, and we were able to set something up, and he came here, and, you know, I was very happy to learn that we both shoot film on the same Olympus Mu2. It's like a point and shoot camera, 35 millimeter film camera. So it was cool to see that he shoots on that too, but his was so beat up, and he was telling me how he loved that camera when he was motorbiking across the USA because he could have it in his chest pocket and one-handed shoot while driving because, you know, you got to capture moments quickly. So that camera helped him do that. But Remy was just an incredible speaker and storyteller and teacher, and it was really cool to chat with him and learn about his life and learn about his approach. And he's, again, one of those people that invokes real emotion and character in his subjects, and he is a creator of experiences and a creator of stories. And we spoke for a long time on that episode, like 2 hours, and I felt like we could have kept going, but scheduling and memory cards would have ran out. So I hope to have him back on the show one day and have a chat with him about some other topics. Maybe we'll go check out his studio and talk to him there. So Remy, that was a cool episode. Thanks for being on the show. If you're listening to this episode 14, we spoke to Ryan Dennis. Now, this was a cool episode to have Ryan on the other side because so Ryan Dennis is a multimedia designer with Pano Media, and he is also a filmmaker and a video creator with Red Beans Record. That's his production company. So Ryan had edited every single episode of The Creatives up until that point, and then after it as well. But this was his first time on this side of the camera. So that was a fun episode just to chat, get to know Ryan a little bit more, and then show you, the viewers and listeners, who is the wizard behind the edits. Another important thing about this relationship that was built. So during the creating of the Creatives Podcast, Ryan and I were working closely together, and it basically birthed an opportunity for us to work together even closer. So over time, the relationship grew, and we were working well, and Ryan ended up kind of joining the team at Pano Media and working with us and supporting a number of our productions that we do. So the Creatives was kind of like our first, consistent endeavor in that regard. And then from there, almost a year later, from when we first started working together, even though we've known each other for years before that through our shared passion for cars and modifying cars, it was cool to kind of have an opportunity to develop the relationship and work together and grow from that. Ryan and I met years ago, like I said, through cars. He was very early on, shooting videos of cars with gimbals and creating really beautiful films of modified cars in Ottawa. And he stood out, one, because he has a twin, two, because he was holding a very strange looking device, which is a gimbal. Now I know that, but at the time I'd never seen a gimbal before. And it was the old Ronin M style gimbals that are like big. And I always thought it looked like a bird cage, which is strange. But that is he stood out in that regard because he was doing something different. And then as time went on, I saw the way that he would create and modify cars, and that, lended itself to being interested in how he creates videos and works in the video space. And, now we work together, and I'm grateful for that opportunity. And thank you, Ryan, for your continued efforts and ideas and support into the Creatives and Pano Media. After Ryan, we spoke with Dina El Sawir. Dina was a guest that I had never known prior to recording, but she became a friend after that episode. And Dina is a film director who is she's on the come up. She's a very energizing person to be around. She's funny, and she's a hardworking person. So it was cool to chat with her because she was not born and raised in the Western world. She grew up on the other side of the world, and she came here and had to kind of start from scratch. And she's really kind of pioneered her way through in a short amount of time by just putting herself out there and creating beautiful pieces. And I learned a lot from Dina, and she actually asked me a lot of questions on that episode, which helped me kind of reflect on things. And she was asking questions back. Usually guests don't ask questions back, so it's usually me just talking to them. But she was making me think, and she invoked certain thoughts and ideas out of me in that episode that I wasn't initially planning on sharing, but not that it's anything bad or anything, but it was cool to chat with her, and we stayed connected after that. And this summer we actually shot a short film together. So I brought along some of my team, she brought some of her team, and she directed, and I was the director of photography. And we shot a 2-page script of a kind of like a feel-good short film, fiction, narrative style, not something I've been very used to in the past. So it was a very refreshing experience, and that film will be coming out soon, and we have a behind the scenes of that film coming out soon as well. So it's cool to kind of get that experience, and I'm sure we're going to work together again in the future. So check that episode out. Really cool. After Dina, we spoke with Izzy P. Izzy is a very vibrant individual who is also a pioneer in her field. Izzy is a brand creator and also the founder of the Ottawa Design Club, which is an incredible community of people. They recently put on an event actually, and it was probably one of the coolest events that I have ever been to, like social and creative events that I have ever been to, because it was designed by her. If you listen to that episode, you'll learn that Izzy, she kind of sheds light upon what a brand is and what it means, and how a brand isn't just a logo. It's all these touch points. Every point of interaction that you have with a brand, that's what sticks. Not the not just one product, not just one logo, one image. It's every way that you can interact. And, it was really amazing to attend an event designed by her and her team because she's aware of all these things. And, in the episode, we uncovered what it means to be a brand creator. And I highly recommend you listen to that episode. There's so much value in that. And she's continuing to, push forward in her field and grow in her field. And it's amazing to see. And she actually, her and the Ottawa Design Club, they create these things called zines, I guess like short for magazine. So you can check those out. And there's also going to be another event coming up in November, I believe. So I'll link that below. Check that out. It's a really great opportunity to network and just have fun and socialize. So after Izzy, we spoke with Christopher Snow. Chris Snow and I find it was like we have a lot in common. He's a bit of a gearhead. He likes cars and he likes expensive vehicles like mountain bike. His things is mountain bikes. He actually has a whole mountain biking channel called like Capital Mountain Bike. Really cool to learn about Chris and kind of just chat with him about something that hits close to home, which is just video production, equipment, and then getting to know him and his story and his mindset and how he, how he started and like what he learned, and then kind of like in his like traditional teachings of I think he learned film photography and developing film photography in school, and then he translated that into the video space, and it shows his composition is incredible. And as a cinematographer and a creator, he's really good at creating beautiful images, and that was a cool episode to chat with Chris. And I'm sure we'll connect again one day. After that, we had back-to-back Chris's, because in the following episode, we had Christopher Rusakis, founder of Phantom Productions. Now, Chris was recommended to me by a good friend, Spencer McPherson. Spencer founded Point 3D Commercial Imaging. They 3D scan like indoor and outdoor spaces with these crazy tools. So he introduced me to Chris Rusakis. Phantom Productions is, again, one of these pioneers early on in the video production industry in Ottawa. Chris had a really interesting story. He went through some hardships in his life, and I appreciated his confidence and his character and his kind of vibrance. It was cool to chat with Chris and learn about how he's created this successful company and what he plans on doing. And I do believe that he will be a kind of force in that space moving forward. So awesome to chat with him. And then our most recent episode was with a lovely woman named Mazarine Memon. So Mazarine, I was introduced to her by Izzy because Izzy had helped her with her brand strategy. Mazarine is an artist by trade, but she had created this really cool coloring book where it's just a bunch of ink blots, and you're challenged with just what do you see, and you add onto the ink blots and you draw what you see. And it was touching on this phenomenon called pareidolia, where it's like perceived meaning through just looking at something. It's like when you look at the clouds, you're like, I see a dragon, or I see a hand, I see a face. Like that is pareidolia. So it's a phenomenon where like you're finding meaning in something, but it's kind of a reflection of how you're feeling. So this whole coloring book was kind of rooted in that, like, you and I could take the same ink blot and see something completely different. So it's a very kind of refreshing way of doing art, and it invites people who are intimidated, like myself, by drawing, because I suck. So I don't ever actually do it. So it was cool to be invited. And she gave me a copy of the book, which is amazing. And you can check that book out on her pages, link stuff down below. But Mazarine, she shed light upon her past and how she came from a different world and how she traveled around the world and how she lives now. And it was truly refreshing. And she actually came all the way from Toronto to be on the show, and she was in town for some other things. But part of her travels was stopping by the studio and being on the show. So I was just immensely grateful for that. And after that episode, summer went full force, really. It was busy with life, and, I was racing and growing, and also just resting and recharging and recentering myself. So that kind of brings us to here. And, if you've made it this far into this episode, thank you, truly, from the bottom of my heart, for listening and for caring, because it's nice to know that there is a community, and we are kind of all in this together, and we all face similar struggles and similar challenges, and it's humbling, and I'm grateful to have the opportunity to have a platform to share what people are about and share what they've created. And I'm excited to continue doing that moving forward. So thank you for listening. I hope this episode brought you value or just entertainment, and I hope that one of our past episodes, you go back, have a listen. The podcast is available on Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. And if there's any other platforms that you'd like to see it available, just let us know and we can make it happen. So let's connect. Let's stay creative. Stay tuned into that positivity, dream big, and believe that you can do it. Believe that it can happen, and just keep going. I believe in you. Thank you for believing in me, and we'll see you on the next episode. Goodbye for now.